Whatever After? Who's it by? About.
It's about a girl named Abby and brother Jonah, and they go into different stories in the mirror in the basement.
Ooh, it's like a portal.
I told you about this before.
Okay, I was wondering right now. So it's like a portal and they go into different stories. Wow.
And they have to find the portal in the other story.
Can you please go do your homework?
And the same for you in this month. You have to go inside, stay for a bit, and then come out.
Okay, sure. I'm going to do this call and you finish your homework.
And I will come later.
Yeah, you come
And here I am.
back. That was quick. Come, Mama's calling.
Come, I'm going.
Mama's calling you. She's finishing homework. Finish your homework, come back.
Then you will do it.
Do what? Your homework. 3, 2, 1.
Do that.
Bye, Akira. Hi, Vikramaditya. So
Hi,
thank you
hi.
so much for joining us. Are we good to start?
Yeah, sure. I was just trying to get the right kind of thing. Is the light okay? Remember more light.
Yeah, this is better.
Okay.
This is better. Yeah?
Yeah.
So, all right. Vikramaditya Motwane is one of India's leading film directors. He's also a producer and screenwriter. From his deeply poignant debut film, Udan, to Latera, a heartwarming tale with a 1950s backdrop, and Trapped, a survival nightmare. His work as a director spans many genres. To those who know him, this comes as no surprise that he is an avowed comic book fan and is big on experimenting with his filmography. Over and above directing, he has also produced many commercial successes such as Masan, NH10, and Queen. He was also the co-director and executive producer of the very, very popular Netflix series Sacred Games Season 1 and the executive producer of Ghoul. Vikramaditya Motwane and his work have been honored with innumerable national and international awards and accolades. Early this year, he officially announced the launch of his production company, Andolan Films. Given his passion for presenting radical ideas, it is safe to say that there are more revolutionary works in the making. Vikramaditya, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Manaifa. Thank you. That was a lovely.
Hi. Hi. So, Vikramaditya, I'm Benaifa, and we also have Preeti Birji, who is the co-founder of Share a Book India Association.
Hi, Preeti.
So,
Hi.
Vikramaditya, tell me one thing. How are you an avid reader? Tell me about books and Vikramaditya. What is the connection and bond being like?
So I am. The sad part is that because of the way the work is right now, reading a book feels a bit like a luxury. I wish it wasn't. But yes, my resolutions all the time is actually sort of like make more time to read more books and not just read them for work. I think what happens is that nowadays one tends to read more books for work. It's like, I mean, are you getting the noise from the fan?
No, that's all.
So yeah, I think the tendency, what happens nowadays because of work is that one tends to read more for work because you're always looking at new material and that kind of stuff. And I just feel, for me, I love reading for pleasure. And I think that's taken a little bit of a backseat. So yeah, I mean, I used to, as a child, read pretty much everything. I think in terms of memory, I think it's I think I've read the entire Asterix series multiple times. Of course, as a teenager and that my generation growing up, Hardy Boys for sure, Famous Five, Five Find Outers, Secret Seven, moving upwards to the Hardy Boys, Case Files, and then then your classic sort of either the coming of age or Catcher in the Rye, and then To Kill a Mockingbird, and all the classics that you would read when you start getting into that kind of age. And then I think I drifted more towards just classic noir fiction. So anything for me by Raymond Chandler or by Dashiell Hammett or by Eric Ambler, like that's my comfort reading. If I have to read sort of comfort stuff and pick up a book and at any point in time and read it, I will always go for classic noir fiction, mysteries about hard-boiled detectives and cases at middle of the night and that kind of.
Wow.
But yes, I'm also, as you said, a huge comic book fan. read comic books all the time. Yeah.
Wow. So, I think like Vikramaditya, many of us are a select fortunate few that, who really had access to reading. But sadly, there are a lot of children across India who do not. And that is where an organization like Share a Book India Association comes in, wherein they are really trying their bit to kind of, inculcate, imbibe the habit of reading and make books accessible. So, believe it or not, nearly 100 million children are lagging behind in school because of poor basic reading skills. So, I guess the ones who have access to it take it for granted, and the ones who do not really do not just have access to such books and stuff. That is where SABIA, which is the acronym of Share a Book India Association, comes in. So, with your permission, would you like Preeti to kind of tell you a little bit more about SABIA, just in a minute or two?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So we started out, okay, basically I'm an avid reader. I spent most of my childhood reading books, Archie and all the Hindi books that were available. And then, as you mentioned, we moved to Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye and all the classics. So I just went to a local private school near my house to inquire about the right to education. So I casually asked the principal about the library in the school. And he told me that there is actually no need to have a library because children already have enough curriculum to finish. And there are already course books which need to be done. So it was quite shocking. As you mentioned, reading for pleasure is also very important. And there is a huge world which the children are missing out because they're not exposed to the world of books. So we tried and visited government schools near our place. Shrishti and I, the co-founders, we visited these schools to find out the condition in government schools. And again, it was a shocking fact to find out that despite having a budget, the government schools also do not have a particular library period as part of the curriculum or a librarian or the system of issuing books every week. So we met the district education officer and she told us that if you guys want to go ahead, I would give you the full support. So we talked to a few principals and they liked the idea of establishing a library. So that's how we started. We established our first library development program in a government school in Kota, Rajasthan. Our volunteers visited the schools. We did storytelling sessions. And it is heartening to know that the first school is now fully sustainable. The seniors are now, asking juniors to come up and read. So it is a great thing to know that the system is continuing well. And that's how we spread across India.
That's amazing. That sounds great. I mean, I'm hoping you guys have more plans and you want to actually.
Yes, definitely.
That's great. That's fantastic. I mean, you guys are doing amazing work. Seriously.
Thank you.
So, Vikramaditya, just tell me one thing. You are a parent. You are a reader as well in your personal space. How important do you think is it for a parent to be a reader so that his or her child kind of, starts engaging in books? The physical copy or an audiobook, like in Akira, your daughter's case.
It helps. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think a parent necessarily needs to be a reader to encourage their children to read. I think any intelligent parent, whether they've read or not read, knows the value of reading. Even if it's something that you miss out on your life, I do think that the importance of reading is something that is very, very important. Ishika and me, and I would always say in this case more Ishika, because we've always encouraged Akira to read from the very beginning. So from the very beginning, when she was from the time literally she's kind of like Goodnight Moon and all the Eric Carle books would be what we would be reading to her, so she gets used to the idea of listening to these words with these pictures and those little words. And then from there it went to the Julia Donaldson books, because and she's amazing. Julia Donaldson is just incredible. Like, she's such a great writer. Like, even when you're reading them, that's lovely. I mean, there is the Gruffalo and all those kind of books, and the Witch on the Broom, or the Room on the Broom, and all those really funny books. But she also does some really warm, wonderful, incredible stuff. And I think Akira's desire to read has sort of come from there, because we always made a point to read books to her, to from picture books to sort of like words, and then encourage her to go and read by herself. And at any point in time, don't be shy of coming and asking us what this means or what this word means. ask away. So from picture books and stuff, now she's 6.5 and she's reading Sudhamurti book today.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like sometimes like, you're not my child, can't I mean, but she is, and she loves it. And so some of it, I have to admit, does come from her love of Frozen, right? So she loves Frozen the movie. She's crazy about Elsa. So one great way for her to actually start to read a lot of the books with words was when like Frozen actually has a lot of these stories in paperback, which are, Elsa and Anna stories. That sort of encouraged her to pick up those books, and because now there's a familiarity that she has with the words and the people and the characters, and then she gets into that. And now she's starting to read, her own books. I mean, and I'm just so happy she's reading, because she's, and we try and kind of, help her from time to time. Like she and me are constantly doing spelling bees every time we're together, where it's like, spell this word, spell that word. She loves to be challenged, I've realized. So we do quizzes where it's like, name 10 flowers in your garden, name, like, just fun stuff like that. But it just helps her, and then like, it sticks in her memory, and that really helps. But yes, she has her own library. She knows where her books are. She reads pretty much on a school day. She won't, but after school she has a reading time. This time of the night she'll finish homework. She has a reading time. And it's up to her, like, what kind of book she wants to read. And she now chooses whether she wants to go into the picture book or pick up something legacy, or pick up a new book and kind of read it. And sometimes afternoon time becomes the time where she can listen to storybooks. Because sometimes it's also, she has glasses, so sometimes a bit of a strain. So try and avoid getting her to read too much. But yes, long story short, I think every parent, whether you're a reader or not, should definitely encourage your kids to read. It's one of the best things you can do. It teaches them a lot, not just knowledge, but also so much about people and empathy. Yeah, 100%. And whatever one can do, people should just make them read.
Absolutely. Like, in fact, I think it is so important even for societal upliftment. So, like, we at SABIA really believe that accessibility to books and nurturing a reading habit in children is essential, not only to bridge the existing inequity in education, but also to create able citizens who are skilled enough to bring about change in society. So, what do you feel about this, Vikramaditya? In your opinion, how important or crucial is accessibility to books for societal upliftment and improvement?
I mean, I can't agree more with what you guys do. 1000%. I think accessibility. I think, yes, we sit in a place of privilege right now. I do believe that, yes, the fact that my daughter goes to an IB school where they are very good at the curriculum as far as reading is concerned, and they really encourage that, and she has her own books, and be able to sort of like get that for her. Definitely, she's in a place of privilege, which majority of our kids just do not have. I think accessibility to books, libraries, whether they are public or whether they're privately funded, or whether with new age technology, is there a way of creating how Netflix started back then as a DVD service? Is there a way of sort of like having a deliver to home book? Whatever it is, I just feel that. But yes, accessibility to books is really, really important. Encouraging the child to read is very important. Giving them, and you're absolutely right. It creates, I think, in the end of the day, a better citizenry, and I think that's something that we definitely, as a country, without being critical of anything, we definitely need as a country.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now let's speak a little bit about your work. Any particular script or book that has really kind of influenced you, the way you work, your thought process?
Oh, I mean, when I think back right now, I think there's a sense of your sense of thinking. My sense of thinking, my cadence, my use of language. Of course, it's so subtextual, and it's so there's so much of it which is it's all subconscious. So yes, when I get time to think back, I'm definitely very influenced by the Asterix books. I've realized. I think that I have that kind of sense of humor, at least in real life. It doesn't come through my movies, but in my real life, in the way character building and the art of repartee and the art of one-liners and that kind of stuff, which that kind of stuff has definitely. I do think I'm also like, and I said, like, because I love noir fiction, I think um, there is a sense of this hard boiled characters and that kind of stuff that I really really love, and I find that also sort of like tries to, it seeps its way into my work from time to time. It's very difficult to pinpoint one or the other, and I think it's just a world of what you end up. But I think it's so much about the moods that one gets from the books, a sense of Murakami's melancholy, for example, right, is something that you can really grasp onto. And how do you, especially his early work, when you're reading, Wild Sheep Chase or that kind of stuff, you're like, how, there's a lovely melancholy that he has over there, a lovely sense of mystery. And you're like, okay, this is great, this kind of stuff, because it when we grow up over here, at least when I grew up as a, as a child growing up in Bombay, you're exposed to literally Doordarshan and Bollywood in the books that you've got that your parents have, right? But besides that, your worldview is, what is magic realism? What is any of that kind of stuff? So when you read 100 Years of Solitude, when you read any of Marquez's works, when you read any of Murakami's early works, when you read any of, suddenly it opens up your mind to so many things. And then, so if I have to, okay, if I think of something which is in the magic realism space, definitely the credit for that will go to someone like a Marquez or a Murakami, because they've opened my mind towards that kind of stuff. But yes, the examples are so, so it's, I also think I do believe, like, I mean, and amongst book lovers and comic lovers, I think that the comic book or the graphic novel as an art form is very underappreciated. People keep thinking them as comics. And I do believe there are some incredible graphic novelists. I think Craig Thompson, who's done Blankets, I think one of the greatest books just ever written, I think, in general. I think a lot of Frank Miller's work in the Batman and the Daredevil space is fantastic. I mean, for me, that's just great literature. So I was doing a lot of, when I was making Bhavesh, I just pretty much, was doing a lot of just comic book reading to be able to get into the beats. And I think as a filmmaker, the beats of visual storytelling that a graphic novel teaches you, because it's like in an animation film, right? Because in an animation film, you're writing it, you're putting the voices, and then you're putting storyboards. And because it's so expensive, you have a chance to put those storyboards and refine them to an art form, which is why it's very rare that you'll find a bad animation film. You'll find a lot of bad movies, but it's very rare to find a bad animation film. Most animation films will be decent, if not good, and most of them are great because they've spent so much time doing that. I think that's what the graphic novel does, is that because you're telling in panels, you're not wasting any panels. There's no dead space there. There's no fat there. It's all very lean storytelling, and it's a great way of learning how to be able to tell things, emotional beats, wear your heart on your sleeve. Graphic novels do that. I mean, it's kind of, that the fact is that the heart is on the sleeve. They're literally, saying what they feel like saying. I think that's a lovely lesson that I've also learned by reading a lot of graphic novels. Whether it's Persepolis or whether it's Mouse or whether it's any of these other, great ones. And I think those are phenomenal just books in general. So yeah, it's a mix of everything. Then again, there's the whole, I'll never forget reading Harry Potter for the first time. And I think that's, it's the things that you get jealous of, right? Like, I can't wait for Kira to read Harry Potter for the first time, because I'm like, I know what I felt when that. It's like having someone watch Back to the Future for the first time. That sense of going into this world, it's what we filmmakers try to do all the time, right? We're going to create a world for people to walk into where they get lost, and then 2 hours later, 3 hours later, they'll walk out. And I think the kind of world that J.K. Rowling did in those Harry Potter books, I remember reading them, and you're just so lost in that world, and just a constant smile on your face, can't put it down, reading it wherever you go.
So tell me one thing, when you're reading a book, are you subconsciously thinking that, oh man, if I could, turn this into a movie, I would want to cast XYZ in this character?
That's the danger. That's the part of the danger of reading today, right? It's like, because you tend to read, one is because when you're in the middle of a shoot, in the middle of work, the thing is that the curse of the filmmakers are, unless you choose to say, okay, I'm going to work and then I'm going to take a break, is that at least as a director, you're constantly working. If you're not writing, you're editing. If you're not editing, you're shooting. If you're not shooting, you're prepping. There's always this constant churn of doing one to the other. And it's a bit of a drug. You kind of get used to one after the other. And that constant sense of keeping your mind ticking starts to become, and it's not a great drug, I'm saying, but it's just, so there's times when you have to switch off. You have to go on vacations without taking your phone or your iPad or your computer and just take books along with you and do that. But yes, the tendency is when you're a person from a visual medium, that every book starts to become seeing it from a visual medium and a visual perspective. And I have to learn how to not do that. I think it's hard, but it's something that one. I remember. So the last time actually where I did one of those proper things, probably before Kira was born, where Ishika was pregnant and it was the baby moon. We went to Goa. We were there for about a couple of weeks, and I took no electronics. I just took books. I just took a bunch of books. Lovely, and I will do that soon.
Wow, wow. So tell me one thing, Vikramaditya, given that many movies and artistic work today are book adaptations, do you believe that a film as a medium could actually push people to consider reading books even more? Or probably perceiving books as a starting or a trigger point for new, if not revolutionary ideas?
Well, there's a yes and no there. Like I believe in the case of Akira, it has worked. The fact that she's seen Frozen and therefore loves it, so is agreeable to pick up the book, and and that's really helped her to say, okay, fine, I'm okay with words. I mean, because initially there's a little bit of like, it's daunting for her, like, oh my God, there's no pictures here, there's only words in this book, right? But the fact that words have their own world in them, and I think the Frozen books really helped her in that. The thing with the classic thing of movies and books is the fact that it would watching. I'm sure like in the case of the Harry Potters, for example, the fact that the movies of the first couple of books was out before book 5, 6, 7 hit the market. I'm sure that did help a lot of people to say, fine, I've seen the movie and I want to be able to go out there and read the next series of books. Maybe what Game of Thrones, she was doing for the rest of the books until Mr. Martin stopped writing them all together. I believe that it exists. I'm not sure whether it's like a system. Okay, I've seen the movie, now I want to read the book. Maybe if there's within that world of correlation where you sort of say that here's the movie, and associated with that movie is the book, it sort of encourages people to get in there, and get into something. It's a possibility. But books, I know for a lot of people that I know, can be a bit daunting. People do get a bit scared by books, overwhelmed by books, and it needs you to be, I mean, not just an open mind, but also just an openness to a rhythm and a cadence that's not yours. And I think that always, so even when I pick up a new book right now, it's the first 20 pages is always me resisting the impulse to say, put this down, I'll read this later. You have to get through the first 25 pages, 30 pages, get used to somebody else's world, somebody else's rhythm, to be able to,
I think it's like the teething period in a new relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, you have influenced so many aspiring filmmakers and directors. Who has been your greatest inspiration from your personal space or from, the artistic space?
So, I mean, for me personally, it would be Sanjay Bansali and Anurag Kashyap. They've been my two, and as strange as that sounds, they are they're two completely different schools. So I assisted Sanjay Bansali on 2 films, on Hamdilde Chuke Sanam and Devdas. So that was like my film school. I'm learning the art of filmmaking. I'm learning what it means to write a film, to prep a film, to sit on music sittings, to look at art direction, to look at costumes, to go to the other market and buy hymns for, ghagra cholis, a lot of that sort of stuff. To be on shoot, to understand how to break down a scene, where to place the camera, what's important with character, how to edit a film, how to put music to a film. So yes, my film school was Sanjay Bansali. But also Anurag in a way. Anurag was a friend who I met after I worked with Bansali. He was looking, we met on Deepa Mehta's Water. I was her assistant. He was a dialogue writer. We hit it off really well as friends. He made his first film, Panch, and he was looking for someone to do his sound design and, his songs. And I put my hand up, said, yeah, I'll do it. Because it was like, you get a chance to do your stuff. And he was so encouraging. He's always been encouraging. Anurag has been the most encouraging, I think, mentor / friend / person to learn from, who's always so happy to share his knowledge. Whether it's his knowledge of books or knowledge of movies, or just generally his knowledge or whatever it is, things, and let you come on his set and experiment and play around and make his trailer. And so, on personal level, both of these men have been my big influences and my big support systems, I think.
Wow, wow. So, Vikramaditya, I would just request Preeti to speak a little bit about the fundraiser, to let you know a little bit about it, because there are a lot of influencers and very, very impactful people like yourself who have kind of, agreed to join hands with Share a Book India Association, do a pre-recorded session or probably an Insta live or something, and really kind of help us garner the kind of eyeballs and support. So, Preeti, do you want to share a little bit?
Yeah, so basically, the pandemic changed things for us drastically. Since before pandemic, everything was done in school, and we never felt the divide that was there. But the impact that it has now is, humongous. We did a COVID impact survey with our partner schools, teachers, and families, and we found out that there is one device being shared between 6 to 7 members of a family. And sometimes what happens is parents take the phone during the day and they come back in the evening. So throughout the day, there is no chance that the children can attend any online class, even if the school has the provision for it, because mostly the government schools do not have provision for online classes. Secondly, that device has to be shared between 2 to 3 siblings. So since one of them is attending, the phone will get discharged. There, it will take another, 30-40 minutes to get it charged. Then the other child can attend. So there is a loss of time for the children. And then girls are not given preference over boys. Like, it's a very common thing that the girl can do the household chores and boys can take over. So when the schools opened for a brief period, I had visited one of the schools, and there was a girl who told me that, Didi, I will now only be visiting the school one day of the week because I have to assist my family financially. So our COVID impact report clearly showed that there is a huge dropout rate. The digital divide is very much, widened due to COVID, and the teachers in villages do not have access to, laptops. So it is just not possible for them to have online education. So with this fundraiser, we not only aim to, scale up our school libraries, we also wish to start public libraries. We call them community libraries, so that children who have dropped out of schools or families who have migrated because of COVID can have access to books in their locality itself. And then we plan to digitally train teachers and students. So a digital device like laptop will be provided to each such public library, so that everybody can learn the basics of computer, like how to operate Zoom or Word or Microsoft or anything, basic computer literacy. So school libraries, computer literacy, community libraries, and the fourth initiative is we will also be, starting curriculum for mental health awareness and career counseling for children, because COVID has, affected mental health of not only parents but children as well, because they've been stuck at home, and because of, their underprivileged backgrounds, they did not have sources of entertainment as well. So we plan to help them in their career counseling and mental health. And there's a village in Gurgaon, Sohna. What happened was, we had set up a library there, and the point of contact that we had there told us that there are a lot of women in the village from the age of 18 to 30 years, and they are stuck in a, vicious circle of physical abuse and, marital discord and all of that, because they're not financially empowered. So he told us that if you can help them in sewing and embroidery, because most of them already know this art, so if you can just help them, provide them with the basic material, and they can, produce merchandise which SABIA can then sell out and help them get financially empowered. There was nothing like it. So this fundraiser is going to support these 4 initiatives. The target is 15 lakhs. And yeah, with the help of people like you who are ready to support us, we aim to meet our target.
Just tell me how I can help. I'm happy to do anything.
You are doing that right now as we speak. So tell me one thing, what are your challenges as a filmmaker?
Oh boy. That's a very deep question. I think the greatest challenge here as a filmmaker is finding people who finding studios and people with money who are as ambitious as you are. And I'm not being pompous when I say this. I believe writers and directors have a tendency, they are ambitious. They want to tell interesting stories and different stories. And I think the only thing, a lot of things holding Indian filmmakers and Indian storytellers back is the matching ambition of studios and people with money to be able to sort of go out there and let that happen. I believe in the rest of the world, Europe, for example, there's a very, very robust system of government support that happens for a lot of interesting filmmakers. You can actually get a lot of, government funding, private funding, and it's really a part of pushing the arts. I mean, the fact that the fact that the film industry is still a part of the information and broadcasting, ministry, and not the arts, not the culture ministry, automatically tells you where it kind of stands, right? And the fact is that we've never looked at filmmaking as part of the arts. There is NFDC once upon a time did encourage a lot of you had a generation of filmmakers who came out, who encouraged another generation of filmmakers to be able to go out there because they had support to be able to tell those films. We don't have that right now. Even if you look at Hollywood, even where from your 80s move from forget, I'm not even talking about the 50s and the 60s and the 70s where you had a lot of visionary producers and visionary studios where like United Artists. You still, even in the 80s, had people willing to put money into Steven Spielberg's work or to George Lucas's work, or the fact that you could make a movie like Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox. You could make Die Hard with Bruce Willis. You could make Independence Day in 1996 with literally, it's like the biggest film at that point in time, but with nobody. Whereas here, our dependence is always like, who are the stars in the movie? And people are not backing the idea, they're backing the stars. And we only have that many stars. And which is where the problem sort of comes in, is that you need people to back ideas, you need people to back writers, directors. Yes, there'll be a certain failure rate, that's normal. It's not like there's not a failure rate when it comes to even movies with stars, but somebody needs to back them to be able to go out there and have creators, writers, directors go out there and create interesting stuff. And I think for me, that in a way, again, I'm in a position of privilege right now because I've made the stuff I've made. It's easier for me to get things greenlit. It's easier for me to get films made that I want to get made. But it's not so. I don't believe today is going to be very easy for a filmmaker like me who came in 10 years ago with a movie like Udan to actually get that same Udan made today, to get it greenlit today. I believe it's become more difficult to sort of do that. The risk-taking appetite of studios is actually, and yes, you can blame that on a lack of theaters. You can blame that on, the fact that you need marketing money to go out there and shout amongst the public TVs of the world. But the fact is, I think that for me would be the biggest challenge that we as an industry, and for me as a filmmaker, yes, it's about, the challenge is always, it's an internal challenge. It's always about writing the script to your satisfaction, making the film to your satisfaction, editing it to your satisfaction, just making good content. And I think experience teaches you that. Experience gives you ability, and then it's up to your ability to be able to go and do it. But I do believe that I really feel that filmmakers need to be encouraged to make more interesting stories. And I think there's also the other thing, and it's not really the answer to this, but I do believe, and I've said this before, I believe there's a big disconnect we still have right now between urban and rural stories. I think for a lot of us, in the early 50s and the 60s, our movies, even up to the 70s, because they were being told by filmmakers who came from small towns and villages, or who were refugees, or who had come to the big city from, they were migrants who had come in. The stories were being told. There was a pan-India story being told. There were stories of, I think what's happened right now is that because this generation of filmmakers is city bred, we tell the stories that we know. We're not telling the stories we don't know. And there's a big gap between stories from the villages and the small towns to the cities. And it's always been, I think, one of the things that me and a lot of other writer friends have spoken about, like, how do we bridge that gap? How do we encourage writers from small town villages to be able to tell those stories, give them a platform to tell those stories, so that the stories can then either become movies or become series or become books or become whatever they are. Just because the more, it's a fact, we're speaking in English right now. I think there's a lot of that is substantially going to keep growing as more and more parents start to become upwardly mobile and they can afford to. They will always send their kids to English medium schools. That's bound to happen. That is going to happen. And that gap's then going to get wider. So how do you bridge that gap? That's always been something that I think is a bit of a challenge. Again, I'm not answering your question, but I just...
No, in fact, this leads me to another very, I hopefully think that relevant question. Does art inspire life or does life inspire art?
I believe life inspires art, and I think in today's day and age, it's more apparent than ever. Sometimes life is stranger than art, but truth is stranger than fiction. That's the but.
Absolutely.
But it is a codependent relationship, I believe. I believe great art can inspire, inspire in good ways. Lots of great movies I've seen, great books I've read have inspired me to do things because if they've consciously made me aware of some things that I was doing or I wasn't doing. I believe that has happened. So it's a bit of both. And from I'm always happy. I'm the happiest person from my perspective when anybody, and this has happened to me a few times, everybody comes and tells me that, oh, Udan changed my life. And I've heard it, people say it, but I know they mean it, and that for me, there's nothing more enriching and encouraging. And as a filmmaker, just more of a pat on the back than that is when people say that your work changed their life. That's the best thing you can possibly hear. Then it's like, yeah, okay, fine. So art can at least make a change or do something.
Wow. Yeah. So, another chicken and egg question would be that, do you think that good cinema will be made when there is a good intelligent audience, or a good intelligent audience will emerge after good cinema is going to be made?
I believe that we sort of we end up creating the audience expectations, so yeah, I hate it when people say, oh, but this is the audience, is what they want. And I'm like, no, they don't know what they want, right? It's very easy to say that they're like that and do it. I believe that it's our responsibility to make things that is going to, and again, not to sound pompous about it, but just that things that can improve an audience's acceptance of art. I just believe that there is something that's over there. It's like every movie doesn't have to be as simplistic as that. There are layers that can be there. There's artistic layers of appreciating aesthetic value, and I believe that's something that as Indians, there is a general lacking of the aesthetic value of anything, whether it's architecture, whether it's clothing. If you look at anything out there in India today, is like we've lost the art of aesthetic value in architecture. We've lost the art of aesthetic value in clothing. I think the only aesthetic value left in Indian day-to-day life is in cooking, really. And maybe that's because there's love involved in that. And that's why there is always that, maa ka khana, or, that there's a certain amount of love put into food, which is why food has aesthetic value in India today. But I don't believe any of that, whether it's in the buildings we make, it's in the roads we construct, it's in our, sea faces, our village, whatever, like aesthetic value in general, I believe, has been lost. It's there in our cinema, it's there in our TV shows, it's there in our movies. There are people still doing it, and I believe that it needs a overall change to be able to do it. Yes, there are lots of people out there writing good work and writing great books and making great movies and trying their best, but they are the outliers, I believe, that by and large. And I'd like to be able to have the outliers actually have a little bit more of the influence making of it. Would be nice.
That's lovely. So we won't take a lot of your time now. So just like a quick wrap up. So Vikramaditya, over the past year, SABIA has impacted thousands of kids across India by setting up school and community libraries. What would be your advice regarding the ways in which we can better mobilize communities and individuals to our cause? And what would be your message to the audience who is watching you, listening to you?
Honestly, I'm no expert. You guys actually know this better than me. My advice would be whatever way I can help and we can help to sort of like go out there and get more kids to have access to books. I'm in for it. As far as I just literally, because it's not my area of expertise, I don't know how to answer that question. I think it's a little bit of a tougher one, especially if like an immediate answer. Maybe if I had time to think about it, I might be able to tell you.
Sure, no stress. Any parting lines, any closing lines? just
Thank you so-
generally?
No, just thank you so much for the work you're doing, and I think I honestly wish there was more initiatives like this out there. I'm always happy to help whichever you can. The more kids that can read is I think that's a better world. And if we can have more kids read, that is definitely a better world for us and for everybody else. I'm trying to think of smart lines and I can't say anything.
No, I mean, more than smart, these are extremely heartfelt lines, and that is what matters. So thank you so much. Vikramaditya, they'll be making a teaser. SABIA will be making a teaser. So would it be possible for you to, I'm in the chat box, I'm going to be sharing the lines that you need to kind of, just read out or just kind of, record right now. And then we'll just make a quick teaser out of it.
Okay.
And yeah, so
You want to do this right now, or you want to like record a video and send it to you?
what would you prefer, Preeti?
I mean, if we can do it right now, that's okay. But if you want to record it and send, that's also fine. Not a problem.
Yeah, I can do that because it'll just be better quality on the phone once I sort of like do it. I can have Vishika just record it and I'll send it to you in like in the next 15 minutes.
Sure, sure.
Where should I email it to you or do I
Yes.
send it to you somewhere?
Email.
Great.
You have the lines, right?
These are the lines, right? I'm in conversation with Cheryl booking.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Great.
Superb. Thank you so much for your time, Vikramaditya. Thank you so much for your inputs. Like I said, really heartfelt, like genuine inputs, and your love for reading is so apparent, not only through you, but even your next generation. The little we spoke to Akira. So we really, really hope that, our country is in safe hands, and, the generations after generations that will kind of, be readers. Because I think sitting in one room, you can travel the world, you can know the different economies and the histories and the geographies of the world and generations just by sitting in a single room when you're a reader. So, hats off to you as a parent for encouraging her, towards this entire practice. So thank you so much. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Lovely speaking to you. Thank you, Binafa. Thank you, Preeti. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.